Two athletes. Same league, same spotlight. Same cameras flashing every night. But only one is turning that spotlight into straight-up power moves. Caitlin Clark isn't just playing basketball, she's flipping the whole business side of the game upside down. Meanwhile, Angel Reese is moving a lot quieter these days. Clark just locked in a $50 million Gatorade deal, dropped her own signature flavor, and crashed a major website so fast it looked unreal. Her Wilson signature line? It now sits in a club so exclusive there's only one other name in it: Michael Jordan. That's not a small flex. That's historic territory. And while Clark's products are flying, Reese's shoes? Sitting in the bargain bin, sponsors pulling back. Marketing energy fading. The difference is loud. This isn't about who scores more points. It's not about rebounds or highlight clips. This is about the one judge nobody can dodge: the market. Money tells the truth every single time. And right now, the numbers are screaming. This story isn't just hoops talk. It's about real influence, real leverage. And who actually moves the culture today? Everything shifted with Rainberry. Because this Gatorade launch wasn't just another athlete collab. It was a full-blown case study in what real crossover power looks like when it hits the streets. Gatorade has been doing endorsements for decades. Michael Jordan drank it. LeBron James drank it. Serena Williams drank it. Legends across generations. And in all that time, with all those icons, not one product launch ever crashed their servers. Not one. Then Caitlin Clark drops Rainberry, and boom! The website folds before half the fans even load the page. That's not hype. That's demand smashing through the roof. Fans were posting screenshots of error pages. They were trophies. Like digital souvenirs. The drink sold out fast, but the conversation kept running wild. And it wasn't just basketball diehards talking. It wasn't just WNBA supporters. It was everywhere. Timelines, group chats, office breaks, checkout lines. Now look at what Gatorade really did here. They didn't just slap her name on an old flavor and call it a day. They didn't toss her a limited edition bottle and move on. They brought back a flavor she loved growing up. They rebuilt the color, the packaging, the vibe, the whole identity. They made it hers from top to bottom. That matters because this isn't some short-term promo. This is a permanent SKU. It sits on shelves nationwide. It gets restocked based on real sales. If it moves, it stays. If it doesn't, it disappears. And the answer came within minutes of launch day. It moves. Sure, the $50 million number grabs attention. That's headline money. But the structure of the deal, that's the real power play. Gatorade already has a stacked roster. They didn't need to make this move. They had options everywhere. And out of all those athletes, they picked Clark to carry a signature flavor. That's intentional. That decision doesn't come from scrolling social media. It's not about who trends for a day. It's built on hard retail data, audience breakdowns, buying patterns, store-level tracking across thousands of locations. Companies like Gatorade don't guess. They calculate. And what the numbers showed was clear. Demand for Caitlin Clark isn't just coming from hardcore sports fans. It's coming from outside the usual crowd. People who don't watch the WNBA. People who never bought her jersey. People who don't follow her online. They're grabbing that bottle at checkout anyway. That's crossover appeal in its purest form. Measurable, trackable. Real money moving in real time. Every brand in the country is chasing that kind of reach. Almost nobody actually delivers it. Clark did. She delivered it at a level strong enough to overload a Fortune 500 company's servers on launch day. Let that sink in. A rookie signs a $50 million deal. Gets a signature flavor, sells it out instantly. Crashes the site. Keeps the conversation alive long after the product disappears. That's not a lucky break. That's not a one-day trend. That's the market casting its vote loud and clear. From rookie season to global brand presence, the shift happened fast. And the business world noticed it immediately. The Gatorade deal might be the latest headline, but if you really want to understand what's happening with Caitlin Clark's rise, you have to zoom out and look at the whole board. One deal alone looks impressive. Stack them together, and it turns into something women's sports has never seen before. Start with Nike. The reported number, $28 million over 8 years. That makes it the biggest endorsement contract ever landed by a WNBA player with a footwear brand. For most athletes, that number would be the entire story. But here's where it gets serious. Her first signature shoe is expected to drop in 2026. Nike doesn't hand out signature shoes like participation trophies. They build empires off them. The Jordan brand started with one shoe in 1985 and now pulls in over $1 billion every single year. That's not a side project, that's a global machine. And Nike does not build that kind of infrastructure around someone unless they are fully convinced about the long game. Clark's shoe hasn't even touched shelves yet. And analysts are already predicting sellouts within minutes. That kind of projection doesn't come from wishful thinking. It comes from demand metrics, pre-order signals, and retail modeling. The industry is watching this drop like it's a major event. Then you've got Wilson Sporting Goods. Wilson doesn't just hand out signature lines. That's not their style. They are one of the most respected sporting goods brands in the world. And they are extremely selective about who gets a permanent product line under their name. The last athlete they gave that treatment to before Clark? Michael Jordan. Not a recent star. Not someone trending for a season. Michael Jordan. The blueprint for modern sports branding. Clark is now in that business category. Not because anyone is comparing careers, but because Wilson made the same type of long-term commercial decision for her that they once made for him. A signature line isn't a limited campaign. It's manufacturing, distribution, marketing, shelf space, ongoing production cycles. It becomes a permanent line item inside the company's financial structure. Brands don't create permanent line items unless they believe the athlete attached to them has staying power. Now look at State Farm. That one hits different when you break it down. State Farm has been deep in sports marketing for decades. Football, baseball, men's basketball. Big names across generations. But until Clark, they had never signed a female athlete. Not once. That wasn't random. That wasn't some quick trend reaction. Companies like State Farm operate off layers of consumer data. They study which partnerships actually convert into business growth. They measure reach, audience, overlap, trust signals, long-term brand lift. After all that analysis, they chose Clark. That tells you something. That's a company making a calculated move based on numbers, not noise. And they don't make those calls lightly. Now stack it all together. Nike, Wilson, State Farm, Gatorade. These are not small brands chasing a viral moment. These are giants in American culture. And every single one of them made major financial commitments to Clark within about a 2-year window. When institutions that big move that quickly in the same direction, it's not hype. It's positioning. They're planning for the next decade, not the next trend cycle. They're betting on sustained relevance. Clark's off-court earnings in her rookie season alone hit $11.1 million. Let that breathe for a second. No first-year WNBA player had ever posted a number even close to that. Not close. Sportico named her the highest-paid player in the entire league. And remember, she's still on a rookie-scale contract. Her on-court salary isn't what's pushing her to the top of that list. It's the endorsements. Her portfolio is so strong that it places her above veterans with bigger basketball contracts. That's business gravity shifting in real time. A rookie stepping into the league and immediately becoming the commercial centerpiece. This isn't just about highlights or ticket sales. It's about corporate America lining up and making long-term bets. And right now, all the arrows are pointing in the same direction. That is an extraordinary signal. It shows the market is valuing Caitlin Clark at a level where her base salary almost doesn't matter in the bigger commercial picture. Her league paycheck is just one slice. The real weight is coming from outside the arena. Then Forbes stepped in and named her the most powerful female athlete on the planet. Not just in the WNBA, not just in basketball, on the planet, across all active women in every sport. That's not hype talk. That's based on sponsorship value, audience reach, economic impact, and how strongly an athlete's influence turns into real dollars in the real world. Brands made their move. Forbes made their ranking. Sportico made their list. Fans crashed a website. When you line all that up, the message isn't confusing. It's loud and clear. Now shift the lens to retail and the market response. A signature shoe is supposed to be a power statement. It's when a brand plants its flag and says, "This is our athlete. This is our long-term bet." It's not casual. It's not temporary. It's not something you quietly test for a season and forget. It's a full commitment. Manufacturing capacity, distribution networks, marketing budgets, shelf space, public identity. The brand is saying this athlete represents something durable and commercially real. Angel Reese's Reebok signature shoe was introduced with that exact energy. When Reebok signed her in 2024, the rollout was loud and strategic. The timing wasn't random either. Clark's Nike deal had just dominated headlines, and the sports world was deep in conversation about what her rise meant for women's basketball. Reebok entered that conversation with purpose. They positioned the Reese partnership as their answer. Their declaration that the women's game had more than one major commercial force, and they had secured theirs. The media coverage was strong at first. Reese was visible, confident, and vocal about what the deal represented. Reebok framed it as a key step in their return to women's sports, a space they had stepped away from for years. The narrative was carefully built, and at launch, it felt significant. Then the product hit shelves. Within months, a different signal started flashing. Major retailers began discounting the shoe. Not a short-term promo. Not a planned seasonal markdown tied to a new release. We're talking about steady, visible discounting at large footwear chains like DSW and others. In the shoe business, that pattern speaks clearly. Inventory sitting. Floor space needing to be cleared. Capital needing to be recovered. Everyone in retail understands what that means. Demand didn't match supply. The urgency wasn't there. There were no digital lines, no sellout headlines, no fans racing to post screenshots, no wave of links flying around before stock disappeared. The big cultural moment a signature shoe is supposed to spark just didn't show up in measurable ways. Now compare that to Clark's upcoming Nike signature shoe. As of early 2026, there isn't even a confirmed release date yet. The product doesn't officially exist in stores. And still, analysts are already projecting sellouts within minutes of launch. Retail tracking firms are modeling demand scenarios based on how fast Clark's current Nike gear moves. Nike is building marketing infrastructure around a shoe consumers can't even buy yet. The anticipation is active before the product is even real. That contrast isn't subtle. One launch entered the market with strong headlines but struggled to create sustained buying momentum. The other hasn't launched at all, and the demand modeling is already aggressive. In today's sports economy, brands don't just watch social media reactions. They watch velocity, conversion rates, restock frequency, secondary market chatter, pre-release buzz measured in data dashboards. That's how modern influence is tracked. And right now, the anticipation around Clark's shoe exists in advance. It's being calculated, projected, and built into forecasts before a single pair hits the floor. That kind of positioning doesn't happen by accident. It happens when companies see signals they trust. This is the difference between a brand stepping hard on the gas and a brand quietly easing off the pedal. When you look at Reebok's marketing activity after the Reese shoe launch, the full story starts to come into focus. In the months following the release, the promotional rhythm slowed down fast. Social media campaigns became scattered. The steady drumbeat you usually see with a signature athlete. The storytelling, the behind-the-scenes content, the appearances, the constant product push. It faded. Nike and Adidas keep that engine running non-stop for athletes they believe in. Here, the noise dropped off. For a partnership that was introduced as a bold strategic move, the energy cooled quickly. And anyone paying attention could see it. The institutional excitement that came with the announcement didn't hold. It thinned out. That kind of pullback isn't random. Brands don't suddenly go quiet on investments they feel great about. Silence usually means reassessment. And reassessment usually means internal conversations that aren't glowing with confidence. Sales numbers are part of that picture. But they aren't the only factor. There's something else the footwear industry tracks closely. Association risk. It doesn't always show up in a basic sales report, but it shows up clearly in brand perception studies and consumer sentiment data. Big companies constantly monitor what their sponsored athletes are connected to in public conversation, not just popularity, not just follower counts. They measure tone, emotion, context. What feeling pops up when a consumer hears that athlete's name in a store aisle? Throughout 2024 and into 2025, the public discussion around Reese often included recurring controversy. Headlines kept appearing. Social media moments kept circulating. But controversy alone doesn't equal positive brand lift. Some announcements felt reactive instead of driven by a strong, independent commercial identity. Some public comments generated attention, but not necessarily broad goodwill. Attention can spike metrics for a day. Goodwill sustains partnerships for years. Brands have entire risk assessment teams built for this exact scenario. Their job is to project how a partnership looks 3 to 5 years down the line. They model patterns. They track sentiment trends. They evaluate whether the long-term upside outweighs the friction. Whatever those internal evaluations concluded, the clearest signal didn't come from a press release. Companies rarely issue public statements saying they are rethinking strategy. The real signal showed up in budget allocation. Marketing spend shrank. Visibility decreased. The shoe moved to markdown racks. The overall push softened. In the footwear world, that combination speaks plainly. It suggests the initial bet didn't deliver the expected return. And right now, there's no strong public evidence that the next phase looks dramatically different from the last one. Now zoom out. Here's what many people misunderstand about commercial power. It isn't about who trends on a random Tuesday. It isn't about who generates the most heated debate online. It isn't about who dominates a news cycle for 48 hours. Real commercial power shows up in quieter moments. It shows up when a consumer walks into a store, stands in the aisle, and reaches for one product over another. It shows up when someone who doesn't follow sports still recognizes a name on a shelf. It shows up in repeat purchases, in restocks, in retailers expanding shelf space instead of shrinking it. Noise is temporary. Buying behavior is measurable. Brands don't commit tens of millions of dollars because of volume alone. They commit because they believe the athlete's name triggers trust, excitement, and positive association at the checkout counter. And when you compare aggressive expansion on one side with visible hesitation on the other, the contrast becomes hard to ignore. Or when someone opens a browser or pulls out a credit card. That moment, repeated millions of times in stores, online carts, and checkout lines, is where social media hype either turns into real money or quietly fades into background noise. And for the past 2 years, the market has been sending a crystal clear signal about Caitlin Clark. When Clark finished her first WNBA season with the Indiana Fever in 2024, the results weren't slow. They weren't subtle. They were immediate. And they were structural. The Fever's average home attendance jumped more than 30% compared to the previous season. That's not a tiny bump. That's a surge. Road games in cities that rarely sold out suddenly had packed arenas weeks in advance, specifically because Clark was on the visiting roster. Broadcast partners felt it too. ESPN and other networks reported viewership spikes the league had never seen before. Not good for the WNBA numbers. Record-setting numbers. Then came the 2024 Commissioner's Cup Final. The ratings from that game triggered serious discussions inside network boardrooms about what WNBA broadcast rights should actually cost moving forward. That detail matters more than most people think. TV rights are not priced on emotion. They're priced on audience size, demographics, consistency, and how reliably people tune in over an entire season. When executives start reevaluating a league's media value because one player is moving ratings, that's not a hot streak. That's structural impact. That's a shift in leverage. Nike saw that data building in real time. And in that same window, they made their move. $28 million over 8 years. The largest footwear endorsement deal in WNBA history. A signature shoe already in development before her second season even tipped off. Nike does not hand out signature shoes generously. That program is reserved for a very short list of athletes the company believes can carry an entire product ecosystem. They built their modern empire on that exact bet with Michael Jordan in 1985. They don't recreate that infrastructure unless the confidence level is extremely high. Then there's State Farm. In 2024, State Farm became the first brand in its own history to sign a female athlete to an endorsement deal. Think about that. Decades in sports marketing, partnerships with Patrick Mahomes, Chris Paul, Aaron Rodgers, but never a woman until Clark. That's not a line you cross casually. After years of staying in a certain lane, that kind of shift requires serious internal analysis. They would have surveyed customers, studied demographic overlap, modeled brand lift projections, tested association strength across market segments, ran scenario planning on long-term impact. They did all of that and still wrote the check. Then came the Gatorade launch in early 2026. And what happened next erased any lingering doubt about whether Clark's commercial pull was real. After the Rainberry release, Gatorade's internal data showed something specific. The purchase velocity wasn't coming only from sports fans. It wasn't limited to WNBA followers. It wasn't just her existing fan base making coordinated buys. It was general consumers. People with no clear history of following basketball were grabbing the bottle. Shoppers who had never bought a Clark jersey. Customers whose past purchases had nothing to do with the sport. The cultural moment crossed over into mainstream behavior. That is the metric that separates loyal support from true crossover appeal. Gatorade's retail tracking confirmed it. The demand was broad, it was fast, and it came from outside the expected audience boundaries. That's what major brands chase. Not just visibility, not just noise, not just trending topics. What moves companies from hesitation to long-term commitment is proof that an athlete can reach people who weren't already looking for them. Clark has been delivering that proof consistently for 2 straight years. The market picked up on it before many headlines did. The numbers stacked up quietly. The attendance jumped. The ratings climbed. The endorsements multiplied. The website crashed. The shoes are projected to fly. The flavor keeps moving off shelves. The market doesn't shout. It doesn't argue online. It just measures behavior and adjusts investment accordingly. And so far, its verdict has been steady and clear. Still, in the shadow of that success, questions remain. How high is the ceiling? Can this momentum keep climbing year after year? Can Angel Reese, or anyone else, close the commercial gap? Or has the market already created separation that's difficult to reverse? The story isn't finished, not even close, because the next phase won't just test popularity. It will test durability. It will test whether this surge becomes a decade-long run or levels out under new pressure. The numbers have spoken so far. Now the future will decide just how far this wave can really go.